Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to those of us here. Shabbat Shalom to those of us at home as they join. We are so delighted that you are with us for our Czech Scroll Memorial Service here in our synagogue, Finchley Progressive. We are welcoming several honoured guests this morning. Janine Weber has returned to be with us this morning after her extraordinary testimony at our Holocaust Memorial Day service. Rabbi Thomas Salomon and Renee Salomon, honoured guests and friends, just so special that you are here this morning. So our service is service number 2 as we go into our normal prayers this morning, and the sacred heart of the service will of course be our Torah service, where we tell more of the story of our Czech scrolls. Let's stand for Matovu. We're on page 112. Commemorating and recalling and offering gratitude for our 3 Czech scrolls, and in doing so, as we anticipate Yom HaShoah just next week, we allow ourselves moments to reflect on our Jewish history. So, as a reading this morning, Leslie will offer, instead of the reading on page 112, some thoughts by Václav Havel.
Shabbat Shalom. It is my conviction that the tragedy of the Holocaust victims must be remembered again and again, among the reasons because its last surviving witnesses are still with us. No one but they can convey to us a first-hand historical experience, teaching us that every act of racism or of intolerance towards minorities may be the beginning of an onslaught onto the very foundations of human civilization. Behind every manifestation of prejudice towards the Roma and behind every anti-Semitic remark, there is an encoded threat of transports and gas chambers. But the Holocaust is not only a subject to be taught, its victims are still alive and must not be forgotten, because their experience is a warning to us all. It is our obligation to give these survivors our attention and care, to relate to them, to listen attentively to what they tell us. Their voice must be heard by those who will shape the civilization of the third millennium.
Thank you, Leslie. With those words ringing in our ears, let's offer Eloheinu Shama, top of page 113. Biyado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish. Baruch she'ama v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, hamchulal b'fi amo, moshubach umfa'a b'shon hasidav v'avadav, b'shvachot u'vizmorot, nagadelcha v'namlichecha, malkeinu yachid chei ha'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, Melech Mechulal B'Tishbachot. I invite us over to page 116. Yihu l'ratzon imre fi v'hegion libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart, be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer.
Zmirot v'shirim erot, ki elecha nafshi taro, nafshi hinda b'tzel yadecha ladat koratzotecha, midedabri lichodecha, omer liri el dodecha,
Stand if you're able to join us for Yishtabach as we move to the Baruch Hu.
Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh B'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz, Ki Lecha Na'eh Adonai Eloheinu, לאלוהי אבותינו, שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בשירי זמרה.
Page 135 for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai, Amevorach. Baruch Adonai, Amevorach, leolam vaed.
Please sit down. The two blessings before the Shema, join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzeh or uvorech choshech, oseh shalom uvoreh et hakol. Hame'er la'aretz v'ledarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo machadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mala ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, v'al morei or she'asita, yafaruch ha'sela, baruch atah Adonai, yotzeh ha'morot. And together in English, great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching. Make us faithful to your commandments and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'yamo Yisrael, b'ahava. Let's stand for the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto, Le'olam.
Uvachol modecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi matzavacha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uv'leftecha v'derech, u'kshopcha uv'kumecha, u'kshatam lo'ot al yadecha, v'hayu l'totafot beinenecha, וכתבתם על מזות ביתך ובשעריך.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Let's sit down. Good and beautiful and true, sound, established and enduring are these words now and forever. True it is, Eternal One, that you are our sovereign God and Redeemer, as you were the God and Redeemer of our ancestors. You are our Maker, the rock of our salvation. We've known you always as our helper and our liberator. There is no God but you. Truly you are first and you are last. We have no Redeemer but you. You redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang to you this song.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Torah tehilot osef melech.
שירה חדשה שיבחו גואלים לשמך על שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו.
Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. To Israel, kuma be'ezrat Israel, go'aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, go'aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, God Yisrael.
Stand if you're able and comfortable to for the tefillah. For us, it feels we've had such an intense Pesach, so many festivals, so much Hallel and additional observation of the festival. It's so interesting to be back with a Shabbat this morning.
Adonai sefatai tiftahu fi agitei lahecha. Adonai sefatai tiftahu fi agitei lahecha.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Hoseh Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Machayei Metim Atah Rav Lahoshia. Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh U'Morid HaTal.
Mechalkel Chayim v'Chesed, Mechayim Eitim Rachamim Rabim, Zomech Novim Rover Olim Umatim Asurim Umakayem Emunato B'Shemei Afar Mi Chamocha Ba'aderot U'Midomelav
ונתן להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו, בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו.
כבודו מלא עולם.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, דור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד עוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושה נקיש. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד עוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושה נקיש. בשמך אלוהינו, אלוהינו לא ינוש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, הקדוש ברוך הוא. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד עוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Let's sit down as we mark Shabbat. Yismachu.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת. מקדשי שלי שבת, כולם יזכרו ויתעמדו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת. השביעי רצית בו וקידש לו שבת. עמדת ימין אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת הקורא מונה שבת.
Baruch atah Adonai Makadesh HaShabbat. Top of page 144. I love this paragraph as we hope that our prayers have been acceptable, effective, bound us together. R'tzeh Adonai Eloheinu b'yamcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam b'ahavat tekabel, u'tehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Baruch ata Adonai, she'otecha levadecha b'yera na'avot. Modim anachnu lach, she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Tzur hayenu magen yishenu, ata hu l'dor v'dor. Nodeh lecha saper tehilatecha, al hayenu hamsurim biyadecha, ve'al nishmotenu hapokudot lach. V'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu, v'al niflotecha v'tovotecha, shebechol eit erev v'voker v'tzoharayim. Baruch ata Adonai, atov shimcha ulacha na'eh lohodot. So we offer our morning prayer for peace. This has taken on a new poignancy these last 56 days or more, and allow us, although as Rabbi John Rayner Zichrono Livracha wrote so poignantly, it takes more than just a praying for peace. Nonetheless, this prayer allows us to consider, to reflect our place here as we watch what unfolds.
Shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom.
Adonai Oseh HaShalom. Let's take a few moments for silent prayer and reflection.
Ireki Legion Lili Lepanecha Adonai Turi Vegoali Adonai Turi Vegoali Ularatson Irefi Vegion Livi Lefanecha Adonai Turi Vegali Adonai Turi Vegali Ose shalom bimroma Uyase shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael Ve'al kol bnei Adam Ose shalom bimroma Uyase shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael Ve'al kol Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu.
Kriyat Torah, the heart of our service as we read Torah. And this morning it's really a great honor. Last year we had a bumper crop of an adult B'nai Mitzvah group who read the portion, the double portion, Achrei Mot Kedoshim, and two of the class will be reading Torah again this morning. Just that sense of honoring Torah, honoring learning, of developing a skill, of being able to come back to it. And this morning, of course, they will do so in a brand new Sefer Torah. And as they might tell you, it is completely different in this Czech scroll that we are reading from, the layout, the stretching of the words. But it adds even more poignancy, specialness to the Shabbat service this morning for Annabelle and Chris to be reading. So we're on page 481.
Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai V'ein k'ma'asecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim U'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yisrov le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitein Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlu l'Adonai iti u'noromama shemo yachdav.
Lecha Adonai, Agduna v'Agdura, v'Hati
down, and before we call up representatives from our Kabbalat Torah class for an Aliyah LaTorah, all of them read from this Czech scroll for their B'nai Mitzvah, and these three who happen to also be assistant teachers. Actually, Hannah, you're a teacher now, maybe. Yeah, assistant teachers and teacher will bless our Torah this morning. But before doing so, we have a few opportunities to honor the three scrolls that we have and also the binders that have been created for them. Our own fantastic Valerie Boyd-Helner, who is being cautious around COVID, so isn't up on the bima to share the story, has written the story of our binders, and Bob Luder is going to share part of that story, because we have something extraordinary with these two binders that we have created to honor the scrolls and to honor ensuing life in our congregation. So Bob, if I ask you to come up just to share both the story that Valerie shared with you, and here are the binders in front of you, the two of them, and we'll make sure that the congregation can see them after. So Bob's going to share the story and then a little more of his own connection, because Bob has a grandson on this binder, but over to you first.
Thank you. So I'm sorry Valerie couldn't do this herself, so I'll try and be Valerie. Sorry, over here. Sorry, okay?
Yes, good.
Fine. We at FPS are very fortunate in that we are guardians of three Torah scrolls that belonged to Jewish communities in Moravia and Bohemia before World War II. Those communities were all destroyed during the Shoah, and we remember and memorialize them regularly in our services at FPS. Two of our scrolls come from Austerlitz, also known as Slavkov, and Kolodeje. Our B'nai Mitzvah children read from them, and over the years we have done research into those communities. Today, however, I want to tell you about our little scroll and the binder we have made for it. This little scroll is an orphan scroll, as no one knows where in former Czechoslovakia it comes from or how it was used. What we do know is that the people who read from it or heard it being read were taken and murdered in the Shoah. As a memorial to all those unknown victims, we created a new binder for this little scroll. Two members of FPS, Linda Gewurz, an artist, and Ruth Bruckner, a calligrapher, worked hard making the binder several years ago, but that's not the end of the story. This new binder commemorates the lives of those who were lost, but also celebrates new life in a safe, healthy community here at FPS. As you see,
So this was the first one created. Are you about to talk about black and white or not?
Yes, in a second. Where are we? Yes, as you see, show binder, Praha is painted at one end in black, so that's obviously Czech for Prague, and FPS depicted in full colour at the other end. Valerie's idea was, as new babies born into our community, to embroider and applique their names and dates of birth onto the back of the binder, and hence my first grandchild, Ilya, is on there somewhere.
Ilya is on the second binder that we created for our larger scroll, which is this one. Yeah. And there is Ilya's name.
Blessed with the wonderful name of Ilya Jeffrey Hyman Luda-Rosefield. So he's got enough
Truly
names
a blessing, yes.
for all of you. This was to be an ongoing celebration of new life in our warm and vibrant community, and is in fact now full. Not surprising, as we started this project in 2010. However, continuing what has now become a tradition at FPS, Linda created another binder, one which we see almost every week on our Shabbat scroll. As more babies are born into the congregation, we continue to add their names to this new binder, welcoming them into our community. Happily, it is an ongoing project inspired by our little Czech scroll. And just without boring you to tears, a couple of words. When I came more frequently to Shul, I would often see the scroll taken out, and I was always fascinated by what was written on it, saying Austerlitz Slavkov. And I thought one day I will have to go and find out where that is. A friend of mine married a Slovak girl, and so in 1995 we drove through the Czech Republic and Hungary and Austria to Slovakia, and then on the way back we found Slavkov. And Slavkov is a little town not far from Brno, quite near the border between what is now Czech Republic and Slovakia. We arrived about 4:30 in the afternoon. We had no idea where to find things or where to go or what to do. But Austerlitz, as you may know, is a Napoleonic battle, and there is a castle there with a museum. So for the want of anything better to do, I went in there and thought, in very halting German, to try and ask for where the synagogue was. As I walked up the stairway, I saw a few bits of stone masonry with Hebrew writing on it, which I thought was odd. And then I asked, as I say, in very halting German, the woman at the desk, and she got quite animated. She started drawing me numbers and of the villages of people who were taken to Auschwitz, and she pointed me to the street where the synagogue was. And I found it, and we found the lane on which it was. The building still stands. I took a picture of it and wrote a little article for the Synagogue Mag. And obviously along that street you saw quite a few houses where there had been, I've now gone dysphasic, what do you put on a door? Mezuzah. Age. So it was clearly the Jewish quarter of town, and it felt very poignant, and I felt, as you might imagine, a connection to our synagogue I hadn't felt before. I will stop there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bob, for sharing that, for your own research and being able to read the story that Valerie put together for us and see your own eldest grandchild on this binder. So now I need our Torah readers up here. So if Annabelle and Chris come up onto the bima, and then I will call up. So Chris is in place, ready to hop in, and then I will call up our Kabbalat Torah class. Yes. Ta'amod, קבוצה קבלת תורה של בית כנסת שלנו לברך את התורה. That's you. I have to just comment, because many of you know that before I came to Finchley Progressive Synagogue, I was an assistant rabbi to Rabbi Thomas Salomon at Westminster Synagogue, where on one Shabbat morning, he blessed Raphael as a baby, and here is Raphael now. I just thought I would, yes, that is my baby. That is my baby. So how could I not let you know that, both of you, when you blessed him? So, you guys, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דברי אל בני ישראל ואמתר עליכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. כמעשה ארץ מצרים, אשר ישבתם בה לא תלכו, וכמעשה ארץ כנען, אשר אני מביא אתכם שמה לא תעשו, ובחוקותיכם לא תלכו. את משפטי תשמרו, תעשו, ואת חוקותי תשמרו ללכת בכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ושמרתם את חוקותי ואת משפטי, אשר יעשה אותם האדם וחי בכם, אני אדוני.
I'm just going to skip in to fill in what another of our B'nai Mitzvah students would have read. Ish ish el kol sha'er basaro, lo tikravu, legalot ervata, ani Adonai. Ervat avicha ve'ervat imcha lo tegalel, imcha hi lo tegalel ervata. Ervat eshet avicha lo tegaleh, ervat avicha hi. Ervat achotecha bat avicha or vat imecha, or vat imcha. Moledet bayit, or moledet chutz lo tekale, lo tekale ervatan.
Ervat bat binecha, o vat bitcha, lo tegale ervatan, ki ervatcha heina, ervat bat eshet avicha, moledet avicha, achotcha hi, lo tegale ervata. Ervat achot avicha, lo tegale, sha'er avicha hi. Ervat achot imecha, lo tegale, כי שאר אמך היא. ערוות אחי אביך לא תגלה, אל אשתו לא תקרב, דורתך היא. ערוות כלתך לא תגלה, אשת בנך היא. לא תגלה ערוותה. ערוות אשת אחיך לא תגלה, ערוות אחיך היא. ערוות אישה וביתה לא תגלה, את בת בינה ואת בת ביתה לא תיקח לגלות ערוותה, שערה הנה זימה היא.
Yesha koach, both of you. Now, this is rarely read in liberal communities, chapter 18 of the book of Leviticus, because although it begins by saying once you get into the land of Canaan, you have to keep my statutes, you have to set yourself apart, what then ensues is a whole collection of rules about sex and about whose nakedness can be uncovered. So we won't translate every single verse, but you can imagine that everything is covered in this section. And when we read it last year, we really read it in the context, particularly leading up to the verse that seems to abhor or offer some kind of abhorrence around homosexuality and around a broader understanding of sexuality. So we had great fun talking about that, talking about the context in liberal Judaism, feeling proud to read these verses. And so today, as we honor the Czech scrolls and read all the bits that we have studied in our congregation, it feels most appropriate. So you guys, are you ready? Closing blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'hayei olam natan batochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Shakar, all of you. So, with great delicacy, David is going to have a bash, but we're going to take the tiny orphan scroll off you, as no one can hold 2 Torah scrolls at once, to be able to just raise this scroll with care, because it is much more delicate than our regular Shabbat scroll. So let's stand as we offer Hagbah.
Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah. Ve'amo Yisrael v'kedushato. Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu le'har kodsho. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu le'har kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romenu. Kadosh Adonai Elohim Romenu. Romenu Adonai Elohim ve'ishtachavu le'har kodsho. Romenu Adonai Elohim ve'ishtachavu le'har kodsho. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu le'har kodsho. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu le'har kodsho. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu le'har kodsho. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu le'har kodsho.
First to Annabelle and Chris, just Yesha Koach for bringing honor to the scrolls, honor to yourselves, and then Misha Berach to you both. So if you are free to vacate, Bob, we need you here. As we go straight into, Renee, it's a delight for you to be here, straight into the Haftarah. So we can sit down, everyone. You've got the Haftarah here. I need it closer. Oh, is this good or not? So our Haftarah comes from the second book of Kings, around Josiah, who was king at the time. Josiah, who was constantly attempting to bring the Israelites back to God. In fact, we attribute possibly a proto-Deuteronomy to Josiah during his kingship. And now we hear how he is trying to continue in the vein that the prophets did, of trying to exclude all other forms of worship and necromancy and magic to come back to God, linking us to, perhaps offering an echo to the attempt in the Torah portion to really remind the Israelites how to live a good life.
Thank you. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You inspired faithful prophets and took pleasure in the words they spoke in truth. We praise you, O God, for the gift of Torah, your servant Moses, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness. Then the king called together all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. He went up to the temple of the Eternal with the people of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests and the prophets, all the people from the least to the greatest. He read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which had been found in the temple of the Eternal. The king stood by the pillar and renewed the covenant in the presence of the Eternal, to follow God and keep God's commands, statutes and decrees with all his heart and all his soul, thus confirming the words of the covenant written in this book. Then all the people pledged themselves to the covenant. And just as he had done at Bethel, Josiah removed all the shrines of the high places that the kings of Israel had built in the towns of Samaria and that had aroused the Eternal's anger. Josiah slaughtered all the priests of those high places on the altars and burned human bones on them. Then he went back to Jerusalem. The king gave this order to all the people: celebrate the Passover to the Eternal your God, as it is written in this book of the covenant. Neither in the days of the judges who led Israel, nor in the days of the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah, had any such Passover been observed. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Passover was celebrated to the Eternal in Jerusalem. Furthermore, Josiah got rid of the mediums and spiritists, the household gods, the idols, and all the other detestable things seen in Judah and Jerusalem. This he did to fulfill the requirements of the law written in the book that Hilkiah the priest had discovered in the temple of the Eternal. Neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him, who turned to the Eternal as he did, with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his strength, in accordance with all the law of Moses. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You've been our source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages, faithful God, whose word is deed, whose every word is true and just. For the Torah, for the privilege of worship, for the prophets, for this Sabbath day, which you, Eternal One, have given us for holiness and rest, for honor and beauty, we thank and praise you, O Eternal One, our God. May all the living praise your name now and forever. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Amen. Beautifully read. Thanks, Renee. So let's stand now as we offer our prayers for the congregation, as well as offering a dedication to our scroll. So Mandy, I think, is reading the prayers for the congregation. I'm going to leave the scroll with you, David. So if we come forward a little.
Eternal God, we ask your blessing on our Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, as well as those who govern our country. Guide them and all who govern with a spirit of wisdom and compassion, so that they care for the citizen and the stranger and bring benefit to all the inhabitants of our land and the world. Bless all our brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Bless our congregation and all its members. Be with those who seek your presence and all who are in need of healing, spiritual or physical. Let them know that you are near to comfort and sustain them. May peace exist in the state of Israel soon and in our time. May you, eternal God, grant blessing to her, established as an age-old dream and home to the oppressed. May its leaders and citizens be inspired with a faithfulness to the aims of its founders. And may the country be imbued with the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice always. May this Shabbat renew our energy to build and sustain a better world and to deepen our gratitude of so much that surrounds us. And let us say,
Amen. And then we offer a prayer of dedication to all three of our Sifrei Torah. We offer gratitude for these Sifrei Torah, which illuminate our synagogue and our lives. They are a precious treasure that serves as a memorial to the martyrs who perished in the Holocaust. They provide treasured connections to the communities they come from. We pray for the souls of those who read from and looked upon these three Sifrei Torah, and hope and dedicate their souls and their names to be remembered for a blessing. We have the responsibility to use and venerate these scrolls, and that responsibility remains ours while they are in our care. And using them and allowing and enabling our children to use them becomes and remains sacred work. We pray and hope we are worthy of the history these scrolls represent. May we deepen our commitment to a life of Torah, Jewish expression, kind deeds, to bring honor to the Jewish people, those who perished and those of us who continue their stories. Today we rededicate our scrolls and the two binders that Valerie wrote about and Bob read so beautifully. May they tie us ever more closely to their history. May the binders help us weave and wind the history and life of our community of Finchley Progressive Synagogue into the unfolding narrative of the Jewish people. The atrocities of the Shoah are marked and remembered every year to honor the dead, but also to commit to never letting such cruelty and horror happen again to any people, anywhere. So we dedicate these Czech Sifrei Torah, our two binders, for use here at Finchley Progressive Synagogue, here on the 22nd of Nisan 5782, corresponding to today, the 23rd of April 2022. And let us say, Amen. And as always, as we reach a moment for the first time every year, we offer Shehechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהביאנו וקימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהביאנו וקימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
יהללו את שם אדוני כי נשגב שמו לבדו. Page 489.
כל הארץ ושמיים וירם קרן לעמו תהילה לכל חזיתה לבני ישראל הקרובות. הללויה
כי לך טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזובו.
את חיימי למחזיקים בה בתום הפיה ירושה Yeah.
privilege and pleasure to be welcoming Rabbi Thomas Salomon to our Czech scroll service this morning. Rabbi Thomas Salomon was the third rabbi at Westminster Synagogue, right? There for a significant amount of time and overlooked, of course, the Memorial Scrolls Trust, which is housed in the building of Westminster Synagogue. And I'm sure, as Thomas will share a little bit, hails from that part of the world. And really, it is a great honor to have the two of you here today, and really lovely for me as well, personally. So, Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Shabbat Shalom. Most mornings, René and I wake up to the classic FM music. And this morning was no exception. And lo and behold, it was the start. As we were waking up, I suddenly heard the familiar tune of Mavlast, My Home. And particularly, Classic FM likes to play the tune, one of the sections of Mavlast, which is the Vltava, the Moldau River. And it reminded me of a story many years ago. I was asked to officiate at a wedding of a young Czech Jewish artist to, at that time, a young man who lived in this part of the world. I was asked to officiate at their wedding, but their civil wedding took place in Prague, in the town hall on the Staroměstské náměstí, which is the old square with that beautiful clock, which has those 12 apostles plus the death coming out every hour. And they wanted to kind of show or tell the world that there were Jews getting married in Prague. And this was at the height of the communist regime, where you couldn't really speak about being Jewish so much, and you couldn't certainly speak about Israel. So the beauty of their wedding at the town hall, which I did not attend, but they told me the story, and indeed I have a picture of this artist who painted a most beautiful painting for me, which is the tombstone of Rabbi Lev ben Bezalel, who is buried at the old Jewish cemetery next to the Altneu Shul, the old new synagogue in Prague. And they decided to that the bride will come in to the tune of Vltava. And the tune of Vltava, for all of us, reminded us of the national anthem of Israel. Because if you listen to Vltava and you listen to the national anthem of Israel, you will find commonality in tune. And they say that this was probably a coincidence when the Mavlast was composed, but nevertheless, the State of Israel has created this beautiful tune of the anthem, and so they played that as the bride came in. And they all thought, wow, they really are professing their Czech nationality. Little did they know what has been happening. And this is the strength of Czech Jews. The Czech Jews have always been able to live with and adopt and adapt to the circumstances in which they were forced to live when they lived in Prague and what is now the Czech Republic, or they like to call it now Czechia. Indeed, there were Jews living in that part of the world, and certainly in Prague, right back in the 9th century, and we know that from Tudela's writing, who was a traveler, Spanish traveler, Jewish traveler, who traveled around Europe and he mentions in his writings that Jews lived in Prague in the 9th century. And Jews lived there and in the Czech lands over that period, and just after the creation of Czechoslovakia in 1918, which was the creation of various different countries of Europe after the First World War, there were something like 250,000 Jews living in Czechoslovakia, and the Czech lands probably around 100,000, of which sadly almost 80,000 Jews were killed during the Second World War. So today there are no more than about 4,000, between 4,000 and 5,000 Jews living in the Czech lands, and in Slovakia today there are probably no more than about 1,500 Jews. But nevertheless, the Jews of that land have survived, and today they are surviving extremely well, and there are several communities in Prague, in Karlovy Vary, in Liberec, in Brno, who are living and existing. Indeed, I happen to be, I don't know for what, as I'm doing absolutely nothing. The liberal Jewish synagogue in Prague has named me their lifelong chief rabbi, which is amazing. But I do go to Brno, which is the town near Slavkov, and it's the major town. And there is a small community of about 100 people, and I do go there from time to time. Indeed, I spent some time there last October, where I officiated at a bar mitzvah of a family which I have been involved with over many years, because the family, the husband and wife, I helped them to convert to Judaism, to both of them. I then officiated at their wedding. I then officiated at their two sons' bar mitzvah, and now at their third son's bar mitzvah. So a long life gives you opportunities, and indeed it was lovely to see Raphael, that I wouldn't have recognized him from his circumcision. But it was lovely to see him, and of course longevity gives you an opportunity of seeing and being with so many people. I've noticed, I didn't realize that this community has been so much involved with binders. And you may know the story. I'm not going to go into the long story of how the Czech scrolls came to Westminster Synagogue, and now they are housed, some of them are housed on the third floor of Westminster Synagogues of our building, and have been distributed right throughout the world. Indeed, there are something like 1,200 Czech scrolls around United States, and of course you have 3, and other communities have 1 or 2 of the scrolls right through Europe and the world. But what people may not know, unless they visited the museum, is that when the scrolls arrived, when the 1,564 scrolls arrived in 1964, when they were unpacking them on the marble hall of Westminster Synagogue, they have found hundreds of binders within those scrolls, and today those binders are exhibited in the museum. And of course, a number of these binders have been dedicated by various families when they had a birth in the family, and also when there was a wedding. They've dedicated a binder to remind them of either a birth or indeed a happy occasion. So It's a wonderful tradition you have, and that you have these binders. So if you ever organize a trip to Westminster Synagogue and to the museum, please ask particularly to see those wonderful binders, which I'm sure will not necessarily give you inspiration, but at least they will show you what has been happening prior to you taking up this beautiful challenge. There were 350 Jewish communities before the Second World War, and today there is, as I mentioned, only a handful of them. I think it's probably worth mentioning that there are several synagogues that are still functioning in Prague. And one of the synagogues which is well known is the Altneu Shul, the Old New Synagogue, which was the original Gothic building, and it was built in 1270. It burned down several times and had to be rebuilt several times. But what it has, it number one has, and I can confirm that, because I went to the roof of the synagogue, there are the ashes of Golem on the roof of the synagogue. You may know what Golem is. Golem was this artificial AI, actually. It was the first AI. And if we went to the Barbican a few years ago, there was an AI exhibition, how artificial intelligence has been developing. And the first thing you see is the picture of Golem. So people have recognized that this was the first AI created by Rabbi Lev ben Betzalel, who lived in the 17th century, and it was a great friend of Rudolf II, and he was involved in alchemy. And I preached in that Altneu Shul synagogue many, many times as a student rabbi before I came to London, as I studied in Budapest to become a rabbi. And so I preached in that synagogue. And one of the most interesting parts of that synagogue is that the Chazan, instead of being elevated, he's actually lowered in the when he takes the prayers. And the reason why he is lowered is because it's based on Psalm 118, which says, Min hametzar karati, from the depths I called upon you, Almighty God. And so the Chazan is slightly lowered where he takes the prayer. And I think it's very, very appropriate today. The Czech government is helping hugely Ukraine today with all sorts of ammunition and support. And so I think it's very appropriate when the prayers are taken at the Altneu Shul. Min hametzar, from the depth I call to you. And indeed, as Rabbi Rebecca has mentioned, it's not only prayers that will bring peace. Sadly, you have to provide other things as well in order to bring that peace around. And just finally, just to round it all up, there is also another synagogue which is called the Jubilee Synagogue, which is the Jerusalem Synagogue, which was built in 1906. And it was one of the first synagogues, together with the Dohány Synagogue in Budapest, which has put in an organ music. So it was the first of the, in those days they were called the Neolog Synagogue. Indeed, in Hungary you have the Neolog movement, which was the modern Jewry that came in and instituted organ into the synagogue. So the Jubilee Synagogue, or the Jerusalem Synagogue in Prague, was one of those first synagogues with organ being built within the synagogue. Czech Jews have always been modern. There was very little ultra-orthodoxy in the Czech, amongst the Czech Jews. They were always modern. They did pray both in Hebrew and in Czech or in German. And of course, Czech Jews have produced writers of real renown, Kafka and Werfel. Kafka, who wrote in German, and Werfel also in German. Czech Jews have provided all that incredible culture and incredible progress. And I am delighted today that there are several Jewish communities, of which 3 are progressive Jewish communities in the Czech Republic. And just finally, I'm involved we've just created a few months ago a Central European Beit Din, which comprises of the 4 countries of Czech, Slovak, Hungary, and Poland. We work now together as rabbis and deal with all the necessary events that occur, and they need a rabbinical Beit Din. So life is progressing. It has not disappeared, and I think that is the strength of who we are as Jews. We always look forward rather than backwards. We look backwards by reminding ourselves of the Jews that were killed and destroyed and communities that have been destroyed, but we also look ahead in tikva, in hope that we will not disappear, we will exist, we will continue our life into the future. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Thomas. Beautiful. A hopeful note to end on. So before we go to Aleinu, we wanted to offer this morning the song Donna Donna, whose lyrics were by Aaron Zeitlin, music by Shalom Segunda, written around 1940 to 1941, a perfect example of how songs are used and shared in different eras of history. This song was immortalized by Joan Baez almost as a song of rebellion and resistance, but we know that its place, where it came from, was in that moment of that war in the midst of the Shoah. So feel free to stand when you're ready, as we'll go straight into Aleinu of Baruch She'olam after Donna Donna.
On the wagon bound for market, there's a calf with a mournful lie. High above him there's a swallow, winging swiftly through the sky. How the winds are laughing, they laugh with all their might. Laugh and laugh the whole day through, and half the summer's night. Donna, 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 Donna. Stop complaining, said the farmer, who told you a calf to be. Why don't you have wings to fly away, like the swallow so proud and free? How the winds are laughing, they laugh with all their might. Laugh and laugh the whole day through, and half the summer's night. Donna, 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 Donna. Calves are easily bound and and slaughtered, never knowing the reason why. But whoever treasures freedom, like the swallow has learned to fly. How the winds are laughing, they laugh with all their might. Laugh and laugh the whole day through, and half the summer's night. Donna, 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 Donna,
Page 519. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael, oseh niflaot levado, ubaruch Shem kavodo leolam v'yimale chavodo. Et kol haaretz, amen ve'amen. V'hai Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Yihi hastecha Adonai aleinu kasher yechalnu lach. Kol goyim asher asita yava'u v'yishtachavu lefanecha. Adonai v'yikabdu lishmecha. Baruch Adonai bayom. Baruch Adonai balayla. Baruch Adonai b'shochbeinu. Baruch Adonai b'kumenu. Avinu sheba shamayim yached shimcha v'kayam malchutecha tamid. Humloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Adon.
Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed.
So as we turn to Kaddish this morning on page 524, we think particularly of those in our congregation who are mourning and remembering their own loved ones. Sandro Corrado Polacco, father of Renzo Fantoni. Charles Joseph, father of Howard Joseph. Harry Karstadt, father of Philip Karstadt, grandfather of Elliot Karstadt. Stina Wolf, great aunt of Barry Kafka. And David Urbach, brother of Leslie Urbach. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. But we also this morning read and hear just a few of the names of the Austerlitz community, of those who lost their lives, as a way for us to honor those people who died and to honor and cement our connection with the congregation. So I have asked Janine Weber, our guest, and also Rabbi Solomon to read just a few of the names from the congregation before we go into Kaddish together.
Zdenka Batryczova, 72, died in Terezin. Emily Berkovich Benjamin, 44, teacher. His wife Frida, 51. A 13-year-old daughter Mariana, killed in Sobibor. Anna Chigantsova, 35, Ludwig. Family Engelstad, Arnold, 77, Anotska, 76, Benno Merchant, 48, murdered in Treblinka. Berta, 37, and her children, Hannah, 11, and Petr, 8, perished in Sobibor. Bert Friedman, 55, watchmaker, and his wife, Alsberta, and 57, murdered in Majdanek. Family Horner, Vrat Botcha, 51, Anna, 49, Pavel and Robert, both carpenters, 18, murdered in Sobibor. Family house merchants, Julius, 58, Elishka, 49,
Leo 55, Sarah 54, Hinek 25, murdered in Auschwitz. Josef Koritshan 87, heresy. Bedrishka Korichanova 54, Josef Kramer 63, Sobibor.
Robert Polak, 71, merchant, and his family, Olga, 47, married 20, Zdenka, 19, Sylvie, 19, Berta, 21, and Berchik, 14. All perished in Auschwitz as with 6-year-old Eric Kubache. Jindřich Schröter, 64, was a baker, and his wife Anna, 66, killed in Sobibor. Irma Seidlerova, 57, killed in Sobibor. Family Steiner, Bedrzishka, 34, and her children Pavel, 4, and Ilsa, 7, killed in Auschwitz, while her father Viktor, 72, died in Treblinka. Malvina Tauferova, 42, died in Sobibor. Arnoshka Tobiashova, 62, in Terezin. Erwin and Adolf Tobiasz, both 69, in Treblinka. Otto Weigel, 57, Taylor, and his wife Eliška, 52, Treblinka. Bogdan Weiss, 72, and his wife Anna, 62, in Treblinka. And their sons Arnoš, 38, and Victor, 42, killed in Sobibor. Irma Gross, 45, and her sons Franciszek, 20, and Louis, 18, both died in Auschwitz.
Zikronam livracha. May their memories be for a blessing. May we keep alive our responsibility to name and think of them as we offer the words of the Kaddish together. Yid Gadal v'Yid Kadash Shamei Rabbah, B'Yama Divra Hirutei V'Yamlik Malchutei, B'Hayechon Uv'Yomechon, Uv'Chayei Dochol Beit Yisrael, B'Gala V'Zman Kari V'Imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'alam Omer Maya, Yitbarach V'Yishtabach Yitpa'ah V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh, V'Yitada V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shemei D'Kudusha Brichu, Leila min kol berchata v'shirta, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiram v'yama v'ibru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya, v'hayim aleinu v'yam kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma, u'yaseh shalom, aleinu v'yam kol Yisrael, v'kol b'nei adam, v'imru amen. Let's sit down. I think our children will be coming in now as I call on our chair, Tamara, to share some announcements and reminders. Shabbat Shalom. Here come the children. Excellent. So first, let me extend a very warm welcome to Finchley Progressive, to everyone who is with us this morning, whether you are joining us from your homes or whether you are here in the sanctuary, whether you are an old-timer, an occasional visitor, here for the first time or as a guest. We're delighted to have you with us this morning. Welcome. And of course, a very special welcome to our honoured guests, Janine Weber, Rabbi Thomas Salomon and Renee Salomon. It's wonderful to have you with us this morning and to have you helping to bring alive for us the connection with our scrolls. And thank you to everyone who participated in and led the service this morning. Thank you to Leslie, to David. Valerie, thank you to you for telling us the story of the binder from your place at the back, and Bob for delivering that story for us and also bringing alive our very precious connection to that community which you went on that journey to discover. I
I have to say, when we talked about the binders, I thought implicit in the description of the binder is the idea that somehow, with the birth of our children, we're able to move from black and white to full colour. And it's always a moment of extraordinary pride for us when our children come to the bimah for their bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah or b'nai mitzvah, but no less so when our adult b'nai mitzvah come to the bimah. And I just want to thank Annabelle and Chris, both of you, for your participation this morning, for your courage and clarity in confronting the difficulties of the passage that you read in relation to homosexuality, for bringing a very special sense of pride to us all. Thank you for that. And of course, the children who came up to the bimah from our KT class and who are our teachers, that really is the very meaning of L'Ador Vador when we see you not only on the bimah for your bar mitzvah, but again in the KT program. So Hannah, Raphael and Joe, thank you. Thank you, Renee and Mandy. Thank you, Rabbi Solomon, for your role in the service. And of course, thank you, Janine, for your role in the service too. Much appreciated. So I come to community announcements. We have a lot going on in the synagogue. It seems to have been an extraordinarily busy time. KT1 and KT2 are meeting this evening. Tomorrow morning, Chris, are you leading the walk tomorrow morning?
I am at Hampstead Station at 10 o'clock.
Excellent. Hampstead Station, walk and talk, 10 o'clock. I think it's about 3 miles, and there's an option of coffee and cake at the end, so do join Chris for that walk tomorrow. At 3 o'clock tomorrow, there are 2 events which are not FPS events, but which I commend to you nonetheless. At LJS, there is a memorial service for the loss of a child. And from 3 to 5, there's an open house at Leo Beck College, which is your opportunity to meet students and faculty and get a tour of the college and learn all about it. There's a link on our community email to book a place. On Monday at 7 p.m, there's an event with Rabbis for Human Rights, which is being led by Rabbi Michael Marnu, who is the chair, and Rabbi Alexander Wright, whom of course many of us know. And then on Wednesday, there's an event commemorating Yom HaShoah at 8 o'clock. It's an online event, and you can access it from our community email. There's another event happening on Wednesday, and for some reason I feel like I really want to talk about this event. It's very special to us, and I know we've been incredibly busy recently. I don't know whether it's Passover, whether it's the work that we're doing to respond to the war in Ukraine, whether it's celebrating Shabbat Resold's anniversary last night, whether it's this morning's really special service commemorating our Czech scrolls. But I feel like perhaps we haven't given enough prominence to the Barnet Citizens Assembly, which is on Wednesday evening, and I really, really, really want people to come. So let me tell you a little bit about it. All through the year, and in fact over the last 2 years, here at Finchley and other communities that we are in alliance with through Barnet Citizens, we talk to our members about the issues that matter to them most, and we work on those issues. We try to figure out how we can effect change in our community and make Barnet a better place to live. We've had campaigns around mental health, around refugee rights, around clean air. And much of the time through the year, you can rely on little teams to keep that going and to make that work happen. And now, as we come up to the local elections, we are having an assembly at which Councillor Dan Thomas, who is the leader of the council, Councillor Barry Rawling, who is the leader of the Labour group, and Councillor Gabriel Rosenberg, who's the leader of the Lib Dem group, will be there, and we will be calling on them to respond to the asks that we have developed over this 2-year process and that we've been campaigning on, and to make a commitment to implement the changes that we want to see in Barnet. And the truth of the matter is that it really matters how many of us are in the room. So, Michael, I'm going to ask you to drop the link into the chat now so that you can all at home immediately see how you sign up to come along. It's 6:30 to 8:30 on Wednesday evening. It's at Middlesex University, the Ricketts Quadrangle. It would be great if you could get there at 6:15, because if you've been to these events before, you'll know they're really tightly timed. At 8:30, we will be ending with an iftar, which is catered by Nisreen, who many of you will know as one of the Syrian refugees who has been supported through this synagogue. And we're making some very specific asks of the council in relation to refugee issues. I think we will also have an Afghan refugee who's currently in a bridging hotel speaking to us about why it's so important to get people out of bridging hotels. So this is my plea to you. Please come on Wednesday at 6:30 if you can. I know Rabbi Salomon was saying it's important to look forward as well as back. I come from a trade union background where we used to say, don't mourn, organise. And I think in the Jewish community we know that we have to do both. On that night we will be mourning and we will also be organising, and I ask you please, come along to the assembly, 6:30, Middlesex University. Thank you everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Well said, Tamara. And we have been reminding everyone about Wednesday night all the way through Pesach as well. We are going to end, because I see Kiddush beckoning and we are slightly later than usual with our kids. We're going to end with Hine Matov, a celebration of us all sitting together, brothers and sisters. But as we do so, we're going to offer Kiddush here so that those at home can be part of it. And as a final blessing for us in the service, I don't need to add any more thanks. Tamara did it so beautifully. Let us mark and count the Omer, as we did last night, as we're trying to do every week as a community. Thank you. I'm sure there's a Kiddush cup flying around somewhere, but don't worry. No, don't worry. So today, let me just share with you. Today, let's stand ready for Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat ha'omer. Today, hayom shiva yamim shehem shavua echad la'omer. Today is the 7th day of the Omer, week 1 done of the Omer of the 7 weeks until Shavuot. So our Kiddush cup has gone wandering, so let us now offer the Shomer together.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz, Uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Recording
Zoe, people are asking for the link to join online on Wednesday. Fine.